Welcome back to Division I Rejects. I'm your host, Kobe Manzo. Welcome back. This is episode 152 tonight. We've got maybe no outside guests per se on the show tonight. I am joined once again, though, by Jimmy Martin, our D3 insider over here at D1R Rejects. Also, Matt Schwarzler, the NAIA insider. The guys have taken a little hiatus from the show. Off-season, things kind of died down. We're getting them back on tonight. We've got some great conversations regarding D3, NAIA ball, and then I got a piece on some pretty cool D2 piece that has made some news recently. That is a huge new video board coming to a squad down in the MIAA. I won't spoil it yet, but you can always fast forward and check that out. The thing is ridiculous. The actual video board itself, badass, but the setup and everything in one of probably the more storied stadiums as well, a pretty sick stadium. We're going to talk all about that and one of the greater amenities being put in down there. We will talk with Jimmy about some D3 prospects that have a chance to go pro, and whether that's the draft or it's a UDFA deal. And we're not talking just the NFL, we're talking XFL, the UFL, not XFL, not USFL, but the UFL, CFL, arena football, whatever. Talk some D3 prospects we believe have some of the tangibles and intangibles to make it to the next level and potentially be playing on, Saturday, Sunday, whatever the hell those leagues play on. And finally, we'll finish up with Schwarzler talking the NAIA coaching carousel right now. Maybe not as dramatic as I'm making it sound, but we do have a lot of new hires as the end of the season kind of wraps up. Some pretty prominent programs having new men come in at the helm. We'll talk about that, a couple of staffs that have almost wiped the clean slate in NAIA. Excited for all of it. Once again, you guys know it. If you want to fast forward to any part of the conversation, use the timestamps of video chapters. If you're watching on YouTube, on that little red bar. Otherwise, Spotify, Apple Podcast, they're in the description. Follow us on the socials. Do not forget to subscribe. We appreciate you tuning in. Let's get right over to the start of this thing. All right, starting things off, joining us now to talk about the D3 scene. We're going to talk today about some guys that we think have a really good chance to make it to the next level, play a little bit of pro ball. It's Jimmy Martin. What's up, man? How are you doing?
It is fantastic to be back. It's been way too long since I've done a show. And Kobe, this is like one of my favorite things that I do. So it's just great to be back. It's awesome.
I'm right with you, dude. Whenever we get to do this is awesome. Having you back on here is great. And now it's just on us to find more entertaining stuff to talk about all year. This week, though, kind of a layup. Talking about some guys that we think have what it takes to make it to the next level. D3 guys don't have a great success story in the draft in recent history, but that doesn't mean that there aren't players at that level. Just a lot of those opportunities coming in the days that follow, whether it be UDFA deals or guys going and playing in other leagues and getting a chance in the offseason. Yeah, so I definitely don't want to make it seem like, hey, this is a list of like guys that are locks to get drafted. Like, we're realistic over here. We understand that doesn't happen a ton. With that being said, do we think it's a possibility that, one or multiple of these guys gets taken off that board? Absolutely, dude.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Like on draft day, sometimes like you'll have like a late round, like 6th, 7th round. Just like you have this. GMs just have like this gut feeling sometimes. Like take a risk on a guy and it pays off big time. Like for example, like Quinn Minor. What was he, like a 4th rounder, maybe 3rd? Like I was just a little bit earlier, but like if a GM sees someone he likes, he's not going to care what school he played. He's going to pick him. So
absolutely.
You know what the old phrase is? It's like if you're really good, they'll find you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it, dude. That's the line used by everyone for like D3, D2, NAIA sports. Like if you can play, like they'll find you. It doesn't matter where you're at, and it's true. To a certain extent, it totally is true. Let's start things off with a guy that has done it at a very high level for a very long time for a team that's won a hell of a lot of games. Braxton Plunk from Mount Union, man, a quarterback who, has certainly had some really great weapons around him. We'll talk about one of them later on, but he has done a phenomenal job for the Purple Raiders. What have you seen from him?
I mean, the thing I see with Braxton Plunk's consistency, I mean, this kid was just lighting up the scoreboard for years and years and years. What did he start? 3 years, 4 years over there? Like, I mean, you look at it like he had a good year this year, but he had even better years in previous seasons. He had 33 touchdowns this year passing, I believe. He eclipsed 300 plus yards of passing in every game besides the last game of the season. He only threw 8 picks. So he didn't really turn the ball over, and that's obviously like a really critical part of being a quarterback is like being able to keep your team in the game by not turning the ball over, not just always making plays. I think that's something I kind of pointed out from his game. Like he did not make a lot of mistakes. I think that's really, really critical as a quarterback. And I think if I'm a GM, I'm gonna look at this kid. I'm like, okay, doesn't turn the ball over, wins football games, like even not even the NFL. What about like the CFL, USFL, XFL?
Absolutely.
any opportunity for
UFL now, right?
UFL, yeah, pardon me. Yeah,
there you go. I made the same mistake earlier already.
Thank you. But yeah, I mean, it goes without saying as well. All these guys we talk about, we might be missing some guys. Like there's totally guys that we could be
no doubt
completely missing or not. So if you're watching this right now and you're like a big D3 prospect and you're like making a move, like we don't talk about you, like
come at us. We deserve it. Like
come at us. Yes, please. We are not like full disclosure. Like we are not like making this. These are the only guys. No.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you look at a guy like Plunk, and you talk about, he's got weapons around him, but it takes a certain player, a certain caliber of player to get the most out of those guys, right? We'll talk about Wayne Ruby later. Wayne Ruby is not the same player without a Braxton Plunk throwing him the ball out of the backfield. Yeah, he's still going to have a prolific career over there, but those two and the dynamic they've been able to establish together, the rapport that they have, is something that we have not seen very often at the D3 level alone, but really in any level, right? And you talk about, again, the clip at which that he was able to accomplish all these things just this last season, man. You're looking at multiple, not only school records, but Division III records in terms of passing touchdowns, passing yards, completions. Like, he has the stats and the numbers to back it up. Obviously, being from a smaller school is going to be a knock on him on anybody's board or kind of scouting report. But, man, like, 158 passing touchdowns and over 14,500 passing yards for a guy that has played a lot of meaningful football in deep playoff runs and national championship type stages. Like, you can't do much better. And if you can, we haven't seen it.
Yeah. And I mean, you look back to what I said earlier, consistency. This is just a model of consistency. And being only 6 foot, 180 pounds also is like maybe, you know, I'm also 6 foot, 180 pounds. Like, I mean, I'm not ripping on guys that are only 6 feet tall, but like, it could hurt his draft stock. I mean, and his chances a little bit, but like, I'm not one to say like, oh, like if you're this size, you can't play. Like, no, absolutely not. But I'm saying maybe for like the GMs potentially. But I mean, I don't know. I would obviously love to see this kid get a shot. I mean, there's absolutely no reason why he can't maybe get some sort of look. You know, I don't really know what he's doing. Like personally, I haven't really looked through like his like social media, like his plans or what he wants to do. But I think it's worth it. You know, if you want to like give it a shot, like, you know, you may as well.
It is a great point too with a lot of these guys. Like, you're not hearing it from us that they're declaring for anything. We're just, these are guys that, you know, from covering the season that we think, hey, these guys have a legit shot to go and play potentially the next level if that's what they choose to do. This is not we're not breaking news on anybody's intentions professionally or otherwise, but I certainly hear you there. He was a semifinalist for the Glardy Trophy. Talk about an all-American caliber player, all-region. Obviously, some of those accolades come with that. Offensive back of the year in the OAC. Like, he has all the hardware and things to back up a lot of those stats. We'll talk about a guy that he faced off against quite a few times, I think, especially you talk about those playoff trips, and a guy that you think potentially has the best chance out of all these guys, that being D'Angelo Hardy from North Central, the wide receiver that has the ability, playmaking-wise, the frame, and a lot of the intangibles that if you're a squad at the next level, you got to be looking for.
So obviously, we covered a couple of North Central games in the regular season. We talked about him in, like, shows like this, like, oh, he had X, Y, and Z yards, he had catches, blah, blah, blah. Forget the stats.
Yeah.
In a playoff game, he had a receiving touchdown, a return touchdown, a passing touchdown, I believe, as well. Do I stand corrected on that?
Yes.
Like, the versatility is what stands out to me with D'Angelo Hardy. Like, obviously, 75 catches, 1,300 yards, 20 touchdowns. Great. You can put this kid up nearly anywhere on offense, and he's going to make your team better. Like, that is what I think sets him apart from like the other like prospects, if you will, in Division III. Is like, you put this kid outside, you put him in the slot, you can put him in the backfield, you can have him return kicks.
Special teams, I'll say special teams is going to be a big part of his way, hopefully, to make it a roster.
Exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. For a Division III guy to be able to already have proven yourself on special teams in college, obviously, you have to do it in once you get to the next level as well. But like these scouts are going to know it. He can do everything. Like, so that's where I stand with D'Angelo Hardy. I mean, obviously we saw him play live for that game where he scored 4 touchdowns, 4 different ways. So I mean, I don't know if that's ever been done. We'd have to look at. I don't It's hard to imagine.
We say it right as it goes on. You're talking, there's a kick return from the national championship just 2 years ago and takes that to the crib, and that's to open up the biggest game of the year. And that's just something that doesn't matter the stage for him. Like you said, all the accolades and things aside, like when you see this guy in person and see the way he plays, not only does he have that playmaking ability, we saw him just straight up bullying kids against a lacrosse defense that, maybe struggled at points during the year. They kind of relied on that firepower offensively with their big-time playmakers. That doesn't take away from that defense at all. They had some playmakers on that D. Did not matter to Hardy. He was out there bullying kids, whether he had the ball or not, by the way. It was a great, did some great perimeter blocking and things too, and it felt like he's kind of the football equivalent of like a 5-tool player type deal, if you will.
Yeah, that's a perfect comparison.
Thank you.
I can't even say much more else. Like, you think about so if talking about like versatility, I'm gonna throw like a baseball comparison right now. D'Angelo Hardy is like the Ronald Acuna of Division III football. And if you're not familiar with Ronald Acuna, our audience, he is like a 5-tool player. He's like a really good hitter. He steals bases. He hits home runs. Plays pretty good defense. Can throw 100 miles an hour from the outfield. Like, you know what I mean? So this is kind of, you bringing any bells right now? It's just like guys that can like do everything. That's D'Angelo Hardy. So.
Yep. Absolutely, man. And you talk about, I mentioned kind of the frame earlier and some of the physical tangibles that he has going for him. He's 6'2", 197 right now, got a good frame, and he's, again, see the dude in person, that's 197 with a little bit of room there, right? Like, he has some room to even fill that out potentially even more and put more weight on if that's what a team sees that maybe they address as a need for him. But big enough to go up and play that jump ball, quick enough to be an efficient route runner, seems relatively proficient in a lot of different aspects of that route tree over there. And once again, a guy who's got a really solid quarterback throwing him the ball out of the backfield. Does not hurt, but he certainly makes the most out of it. His career high was on against Carroll. I think it's worth mentioning. 278 receiving yards, 4 tuds on 7 catches.
It's like Randy Moss on Thanksgiving.
That is absurd, dude.
He's like turning around the camera like he's got his Gatorade bottle, you know?
On 7 catches. But that's just what he did this last year. 20 touchdowns, over 1,300 yards receiving, and like we said, some of those coming in some really big moments in the playoffs, a lot of which against that lacrosse team that had him on the ropes for quite a while. He was the catalyst that got North Central kind of out of some of those predicaments. But we can move over to a man that he was playing on that day. Let's talk about Mike Bertoya from lacrosse, and not a skill position guy. We'll talk about a few guys that aren't in that realm. So trust me, we kind of look all over. These are just guys from kind of all over the place. But tell me what you've seen from him. He's a guy that is training up here in Marquette at Advantage, so been familiar with that, but also followed their team through the season pretty proactively.
Yeah, like obviously being at Stout, I had an opportunity to get ready for the lacrosse game and like watch film and everything. And I obviously just like looking through. I normally just watch like the defense, but for the purposes of like just my curiosity, I wanted to watch the Cross's offense as well because you got guys there, Studer, because like I'm just a football guy, I just like watching film. Like I don't know,
big time.
But I'm like watching this film. I'm like, who is this like pancake machine? This guy is just killing everybody. I'm like, who is this? And then obviously I come to find this guy is like gonna get a shot, maybe get a pro day. Like I'm like, that makes sense. That man being Michael Bertoya. I mean, and I think he's made a great decision going up to Marquette to train with Coach Branch. And he's in the right hands there at Advantage. So shout out to Branch if you're tuning in. I doubt it, but hey, if you are, that's great. I would love it. I would love it, baby. I would love it. But yeah, man. Hey, Branch, I miss you, man.
And talk about this guy, man. Some of the accolades. Yeah, I wish we had a pancake counter so we can give you that stat because that'd probably be a pretty interesting one. There's one right there that was pretty absurd. But a 2-time D3 All-American, a 3-time first-team All-Conference player over there in the WIAC. 46 consecutive starts for this guy over there for the Eagles, man. That is probably the most impressive stat of them all.
Yeah, I would say that especially like being in the WIAC, like, I mean, that doesn't happen a whole lot. Like starting 46 games, like, typically like, because Division III is a little bit different because you have gray shirts instead of red shirts. Like so gray shirts like don't practice at all, and then like they just lift like whatever. Then oftentimes like you'll gray shirt like a really really good freshman so you can save them for longer, or like you keep guys for scout team and whatever. if you're playing as a freshman, like anywhere for that matter, but like in Division III, but in the WIAC especially,
Yes.
like what does that mean? What does that say about the kid? I mean, that's
Dude.
impressive. That is really, really wildly impressive. Because there's some like really good players that have only started like 1 or 2 years in the WIAC. Like you take a guy like Mitch Wecker, for example, our starting quarterback last year. Kid was unbelievable. He had like a phenomenal season this year, but unfortunately he's behind another really good player. So it just goes to show you that some guys only get like their chance every once in a while. And obviously Bertoya really, really took advantage of his with 46 starts, and now he set himself up for an opportunity to play professionally. So
Yeah, and a big thing for him is going to be his versatility on the line of scrimmage. 6'3", 305, not a frame for an offensive lineman NFL-wise that jumps off the charts, but one that certainly can be workable. You talk about interior offensive linemen. So I think for him, that's probably something he's stressing right now, going up to whatever pro day or kind of evaluation he's got coming up next. Obviously, you need to test well. That's a big thing, especially when you're talking about those interior offensive linemen, your ability to get out, outside run plays and other deals. But his versatility is going to be a big part of that. Can he move around in the offensive line? Does he have the football IQ to adapt to that kind of scheme and play in some situations maybe where he's a little more unfamiliar? Who knows, man? He's got the accolades. He has the track record. Super excited to see where he ends up, dude. But we'll move on. And to a guy that we've sponsored here on the show, another offensive lineman. This one, very familiar with that inside line play. Talk about Gerard Thornton over there. Another man playing over on the Cardinals in North Central.
Yeah. I mean, this guy. So another interesting thing. So I see all these accolades. I see, like he won these awards. The thing that impressed me the most, obviously, like his play, but the way he like walked around the sideline and the way he like demanded the attention of the room, and he didn't even. Here's the thing: he didn't even need to demand it. He just like his presence was just known all the time in that locker room. That's just what I observed from that game, being on the sidelines, watching that, because that game was not like typically, North Central was just blowing guys out. Like they would never really face any sort. Dude, this guy was like stone cold.
Absolutely.
And like obviously there were times he would get like fired up and like kind of like get the boys going, but like there was never you couldn't see any doubt in his eyes at any point throughout that entire game. Like, he'd always I don't know. That was my number one like green flag, if you will, for Rod. I've texted him like a little bit, like found each other on socials and everything, but I've never really like fully like talked to him, like got to know him very well. But like I would definitely be very confident if that guy was starting on my offense.
I'd run behind him. I would absolutely run behind him. And like you said, like his will is certainly one of those things you talk about, the intangibles. This guy is just someone who doesn't back down from anything. You saw some clips earlier in the video. He's a very outspoken and vocal leader for that North Central squad. And it's hard to do that on a team like that where you have a lot of this talent we talk about outside of the offensive line unit. That was the unit, though, that I identified going into that game was going to be the difference maker for them, trying to take advantage maybe of that UWL defensive front, who had, by their own right, some great playmakers. They took advantage of the day, and they had, I know Sackler had a huge day on the ground. That's largely in part to these guys up front. The Remington Trophy Award winner, the first in North Central history, by the way, that's the man that we're talking about right now, who has started, at least from what I've seen on the roster and other statistics on their website, just about, I think, basically every game since stepping foot, on campus in 2019. This man has suited it up and been the man, the center position for this North Central squad. Talk about a dude that has potentially more playoff experience than any of the guys that we're talking about on this list right now, playing against really high-level competition. That has to only bolster his portfolio, if you will, his playing style, and all of that kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, and then obviously being that he's on those winning teams, all that winning experience, like playoff experience. I get it. Like guys at like Michigan or Washington or something come out of the draft, and they have college football playoff experience, or whatever, Division I, whatever. He's won 2 national championships or 3. What did he? How many did he win?
I'm going 2. I believe it's 2.
I think it was 2 also. I think it was also 2. I think you're right. You're absolutely right. And he's been to 4. Like, I don't see why this kid does not get an opportunity. I've said this a couple times already, but this is almost a no-brainer. Give this kid a shot. Even CFL. I think the CFL, he would absolutely perform out of his mind in the CFL. I think that'd be a really good fit for him as well. But why not give him a shot? Why not? He's the best center in Division III. He has 2 national championships. He started every single game since he was a freshman. It's like he's again, in other words, just consistency. Like that is a very underlooked characteristic. I feel like in the draft, like because you'll see these like projects, if you will, are like really flashy and the big playmaking ability, but
Yes.
like they're not. They haven't been doing it for that long.
Best
like,
ability is
your availability.
Availability. And with offensive line as a unit, there's not a characteristic I think that is more valuable than that, right? And so when you talk about Bertoya and Thornton in their own respects, like that is a really valuable piece for them. He is a 2-time national champion. The other 2 years, guess where he finished? Runner-up.
I'm not surprised.
Played in the damn thing 4 years.
Like, yeah, 2, maybe 3. Like I didn't really.
That's incredible.
I thought that was honestly like a rhetorical question. Like honestly.
Yeah, no, that's the loss obviously this last year to Cortland and then in 2021 to Mary Hardin Baylor. So, man, he probably would have been in the 5th if we didn't have the COVID year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see. You're 100% right. It's like would Jordan have won 8 finals if he played those 2 years?
Yeah.
Let's say the full years because he lost in '95, but he didn't play. He played like 8 games before that.
Yeah.
So like,
yep. Yeah, dude. Well, we can move on to our last guy that we wanted to highlight here, and that being Wayne Ruby. Talk about a guy we mentioned the quarterback earlier, and Plunk certainly had a lot to do with his success, but Ruby is a guy that has a lot of that flashy playmaking ability. He certainly has been a deep threat for that squad, and I don't know if maybe that's where he shines the most, but they've certainly taken advantage of that. What have you seen from Quick Six Wayne? That's the pretty sure that's the Twitter handle there.
Yeah, I think Quick Six is the perfect way to. That user perfect. I mean, the kid is just like talk about like shifty. Oh my god, dude! Like again, like I didn't have the privilege to like have access to Mount Union's film, but I've obviously seen like clips of this kid play. Wow. I mean, obviously he's a little bit like smaller than like maybe your typical NFL receiver or whatever. But again, I don't think size is necessarily a deal breaker. I really don't. And like this, like when you were that good for that long at that kind of school, it's like. I mean, there's been a lot of there's some pretty big names on Mount Union. Obviously, you got Nick Sirianni, who's the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, there's a lot of NFL connections from Mount Union, and I think in some ways, I think there's some advantages from coming from a school like that with that many connections. So, like, I mean, you just never know. Obviously, we've talked about 2 North Central guys and 2 Mount Union guys already. 2 pretty prominent programs that can, sometimes a name can help you out a little bit. But I'm not saying that he's not deserving of going to the NFL just because he's at Mount Union. Of course not. His kid is unbelievable. I mean, look at the numbers. If you have any doubts about this kid, and obviously the film doesn't lie either. But I think there's not a lot of downside to giving this kid a shot. There's nothing but opportunities when it comes to what this kid can do on a football field. I mean, it's endless. You can put you have to give him a jet sweep, throw him a bubble for a deep. It's like, I mean, there's not many guys that can run with this kid either. I mean, I wonder what his 40 is. Do you have any idea?
What's that?
Do you have any idea what his 40 is?
No, off the top of my head, I do not. No, I know it's fast enough.
Mm.
Yeah, and talk about and I got some highlights going right now. A lot of these are not Wayne, but I couldn't find like a strict highlight of just him there, at least on the YouTubes. And I don't do a whole lot of film combing, so that was not it. There is Quick Six in the back of the end zone doing what he does best. Listed at 6'1", 190, and not terrible, so right? Really not bad.
I grossly underestimated that.
Yeah, no, but like you said, it's not something that stands out about his game. I don't think stature-wise. When you talked about Hardy earlier on, I think that was much more noticeable in his play style, and that could be a good or a bad thing because a team might look at that and say, well, yeah, maybe you're able to abuse that size against this kind of competition. Guess what? In the NFL, everyone's big and everyone's fast as shit. So who knows, right? It's all in the eyes of the beholder, the GM, the scouting director, whatever it is, right?
100%.
But that's all kind of what we got right now. Like you said earlier, though, if there are other guys that you think need to be added to this list, 1, you're probably right. And 2, let us know, comment on something, shoot us a message, whatever it is. We'd love to talk about them. That's what we get on here and do, and I enjoy it. So that's kind of what I wanted to leave us off with. But we can touch on the draft a little bit. I'm hearing that Bears might trade back not once but twice, Jim. What do we think about that?
It is exactly what I was going to talk about. So, obviously, like, Caleb Williams, generational talent. Personally, as of right now, today, I want the Bears to take Caleb Williams. Like, full disclosure,
Okay.
I'm a huge Justin Fields fan. I really am.
Is that because you unfollowed the Bears on Instagram?
No.
Deal breaker.
That has nothing to do with it. And like Justin Fields said, just because you're not following someone on Instagram doesn't mean you're not messing. You know what I'm saying?
It's dumb anyways, dude.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's Instagram. Who cares? You know what I mean? But like, I can't pass up the opportunity on getting Caleb Williams. I just can't. And like, I love Fields. I have a jersey. Like, you know, it just sucks. But like, man, oh man. But anyway, if they don't do that, I wouldn't be like totally distraught either because you still have Justin Fields. You trade the first pick for the second overall pick, and you get like a first, a second, and like, I don't know, like maybe like a decent defensive weapon. Like, look at the package they got for the first pick last year. They got 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and DJ Moore.
Yeah.
And this first pick is worth way more than it was last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and then you trade the second overall pick for the third overall pick, take Marvin Harrison at 3, and then you have like 3 firsts next year, 2 more firsts in this coming round. So you have the 3, did you say Marvin Harrison? You have 9 still waiting for you right there. Who's to say you can't trade up from 9 and go up? Like, what you can do? What are you gonna do with the 9 pick? Like, the Bears have so much draft capital, and like, I know I'm a Bears fan, like whatever. I just had so many like thoughts going through my mind because there's just so much that can happen with this draft. And like, not to mention, I also have like a ton of money in free agency too.
Yeah,
so,
that's gonna be interesting. Is what they do with all that. But I'm excited, dude, and it being in Detroit too is gonna be pretty cool.
Oh
but
yeah.
That's it's gonna be awesome.
Oh.
We're about to run out of time on our Zoom meeting because I refuse to pay for a premium subscription. So
how much time do you have left? Like, I have one question for you. Do you have enough?
Go for it.
Would you have gone for it on 4th down?
Yes.
Both times.
Yes.
I know. Again, like it's easy to look back on, like, dude, you just catch the ball.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's what got you there. Don't abandon it in that moment, right?
Yeah. He took a lot of heat for that, but
double-edged sword.
Like, they were the best 4th down team in the NFL. Like,
and you know what? He took heat from that, but it was all from external. It wasn't his guys, right? Much rather have that if you're him than have the guys second guessing your decisions, right?
Exactly. You know, if the team has you.
Just my 2 cents, my 4 cents, whatever it is.
You were 100%. I was just curious. Like,
no, I'm with you.
Like a while ago, but I kind of want to.
Yeah, I'm with you. But thank you, Jim. It's been fun, brother. I'll see you.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Big thanks to Jimmy hopping back on, spitting some knowledge when it comes to D3 ball. Those guys can play. Like we said, though, there are more guys that I'm sure we're missing. We just wanted to get on here, talk about a few of them that we've kind of covered at length throughout the season. Let's talk some Division II. We're not talking players that are going to the league. We're talking video board coming to a stadium. University of Central Oklahoma. They unveiled this bad boy just recently, this last week. You can see this is a tweet from NCAA D2. They do their little Facility Friday deal. This thing is awesome. And I'm going to talk about why it's awesome and why it's a little bit weird. But this thing is ridiculously cool. And I think the big part that separates it from most video boards, look at the surroundings, what we got going on here. Is this a football stadium or a national park? I can't really tell. Obviously, fake waterfall. I'm not an idiot. But look at a couple of these photos. This thing is really sweet. There's kind of the zoomed out version right between the field goal posts. So immediately you think of like, I don't know, Minnesota when the kickers, the opposing kickers are about to try and attempt a field goal and they have like the gopher doing the face on the deal. Can we get like the Bronchos, I believe? Can we get whatever a Broncho is? Can we get him or they or them on the video board doing something to distract kickers and spectators alike? That would be awesome. But just love this. And there's another great shot, and it kind of gives you this a little bit more of a sense of scale of how big this thing really is. It's 35 feet high. I don't know why I did this. 35 feet high, 42 feet wide. That's pretty large. That is pretty large. And here's one more great zoomed out kind of shot right there. That probably gives you a best sense of scale, right? And in seeing how truly massive this thing is. The stadium seats 12,000, which I think is worth noting. Like, this is not like just putting, one great quote I heard, putting lipstick on a pig, right? This is certainly not that case. This is going into a very awesome stadium down there in the MIAA. I'll pull up a photo of that for those of you who are not familiar. This place is awesome. This is also not the only kind of renovations or boards that are being added to the stadium. I'm going to show you these 2 end zone LED ribbons that are also being introduced to the stadium down there. Take a look at these guys, and I love this idea. First of all, the fact that we have like the building behind the end zone there with the balconies, everything going on, so sweet. I think that's a easy moneymaker for any stadium. Looks fantastic. But you see at the top there, you have those, they call them the ribbons that go across the top. They do have the scoreboard. This is also a great opportunity for, like, I'm assuming advertisements and things like that. You know, in stadiums where they have those ribbons that go around the stadium. Great opportunity for these guys to rake in a little bit of ad revenue. But also, like, takes away the need for a big clunky like old school scoreboard on one side of the field. This operates just fine. It already goes into kind of the existing architecture and stuff they have going on there. Those are about 90 feet long a piece, so 30 yards. Again, pretty sizable piece there. Should open a lot of doors for them when it comes to advertising and other things of that nature. So I appreciated that. I thought that was pretty cool. As a content creator, though, I will say, when you look at this video board, I'm going to pull it back up here. We talked about the dimensions a little bit. I said it was 35 feet high, 42 feet wide. Aspect ratio wise, you know, you think about making video content for this board, it gets a little funky because that's not any traditional kind of aspect ratio, and that's going to be like a very specific type deal. But I mean, that's like, I don't know what the expression is. That's like super nitpicky and whatever. Like, it doesn't really matter. The video board itself looks so badass that I don't really think there's any room to complain. So their squad went 5-6 last year, but played some really good ball. Lost to some really tough, combining my words tonight, squads down there in the MIAA. You talk about teams like Central Missouri, Pittsburgh State, Nebraska Kearney, who they gave a really good game to, Northwest Missouri State. Like, these losses are not in very large margins. They're giving these guys really good games, and this is a team that I do believe is on the come up. Right now, it certainly looks like this squad is going to have all the more reason to do just that. And this is just kind of the most recent part of one of their stadium renovation kind of projects. It is Richardson Stadium. That's the name of the stadium, and I kind of showed you the 2 biggest pieces of those. And for comparison, I know, being a GLIAC guy, this is one that we talk about a lot. What I believe is still the largest video board in Division II is the video board over at Grand Valley State. So theirs is 42 feet tall, 72.5 feet wide. So that is a great picture to show you scale, because there is a human being standing in that crane. And so this is as tall as the UCO board is wide, and then adds another, let's say 30 feet, little under 30 feet to the width there. So that puts into perspective, this is the biggest video board in Division II football. UCO, not far behind, right? Like, certainly big enough to warrant like a pretty cool news coverage. I thought that was really neat that they have some really good stuff going on down there. But that was kind of my short piece today. Nothing too crazy from the D2 side. We will finish up the episode and go over and talk with Matt Schwarzler about some NAIA coaching changes. All right, rounding things off tonight, NAIA had some pretty prominent coaching changes here. I called it the coaching carousel earlier. That might be a little bit dramatic, but we're going to talk about 4 of the new men at the helm for these NAIA programs. And by we, I mean me and the man, Matt. What's up, brother? How you doing?
What's up, dude? I'm just trying to survive without football. Don't know how we're doing it, if I'm being completely honest.
That's gonna be a challenge in the content end as well. Here comes the offseason. And you see all these big time accounts posting who has the best arm sleeve in college football, and you're like, okay, God. Slow content.
The stadium, dude. The stadium discourse of the offseason, I can't do it. I can't do
year
it.
Too.
Every year, I can't do it.
Let's make a poll. Yeah, let's do it. Yep, I hear you, but we're not quite dipping to the depths of that low in the barrel yet. We'll talk about some coaching changes while we do still have at least some content to talk about. And we'll start with Louisiana Christian, man, bringing in Coach McLaughlin. What have you, I guess, first impressions with that hire and kind of that program?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting turn of events for Louisiana Christian, obviously coming off of one of their best seasons probably
Absolutely.
ever, like in recent memory for sure. And obviously the guy at the helm of that, taking a new job, moving up, going to SEMO is I think where their former head coach
Yep.
ended up going to. But Ben McLaughlin, obviously a guy that's been around this program before. I think what's interesting to note too, and we'll talk about this kind of with some of the other coaching hires as we go down this list. I always think the coaching carousel at this level is fascinating because it's not quite D1 level to where like, high school coaches are in the mix, former players are in the mix, like even upper level assistants will sometimes
There's a lot of
take a step
parity.
back and keep their
Yeah.
job. There's a lot of parity in how these work out. I think what's cool about that is that it's, the coaching carousel is super, super exciting, but also there's not a lot of clarity with a lot of this, which I think is the frustrating part. But I think you get a guy like Ben in for this Louisiana Christian program that is on a very positive upward trajectory right now. Guy who's been around the system before, a guy who knows some of these guys. And granted, he was coaching high school for a bit, obviously getting his feet under him as a head guy. But coming back to the program that you kind of help build into this monster you got going on now, like I think that's a good thing for this team.
Totally. And a guy who played here, graduated from here, was a dude, right? Had a lot of great accolades
Absolutely.
and things of that nature. Stuck around as a running back coach, ends up leaving and then coming back, which I think is a cool progression because when you get exposure to different programs, different cultures, and that kind of deal, whether it is at the college level, like over at Northeastern Oklahoma A&M and that piece, or the high school level, whatever that is, and seeing all the different aspects of the game certainly molds a guy's coaching style. So for him to be back, I'm sure is a really exciting piece for him. It must have just been, the right time for him to take this larger responsibility because he's, like you said, he's been back for a while. He's been involved with this program and has been a big piece of that upward trajectory. So it seems like a no-brainer when your team is doing this on the uptick that you keep it going, keep the hire internal, and presumably keep that success going, and you're not going to see any kind of hopefully too much turmoil or turnover after a hire like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great hire. I think that they got a lot of good things going for him. And this is a guy that can steer your momentum. While it might be a different direction, it's still kind of on the path that was formed before, if that makes sense. I don't know if that sounds like Shakespearean or whatever. But like you can bring something new to the table while still being able to build on what you know, and it's a good combo to have. So
yeah, I think it was the first time though that I like reading through the bio and some things like coached here, left, coached here, left.
Yeah,
guess who's back? And very interesting, similar situation happening right now with Pittsburgh State, with a coach Anthony, who a great example of someone who actually got out of the coaching profession for a year, was part of Pitt State staff, left coaching entirely to go work in the business sector, and then when their head coach was poached by Northern Arizona, he comes in and ends up getting the job, and that was kind of something I think was eye-opening for a lot of people that they believe he could come back in, and again, keep this thing kind of going right where it was, even though he wasn't a part of the team this last year. Different circumstances, still interesting to see that connection, and I'm obviously what that means for these programs to have their guys. But yeah, this Louisiana Christian squad, they've got a tough one to open up next year too, which will be a great test for them against St. Thomas, which is going to be an exciting matchup if St. Thomas is at all what we're expecting them to be. And this last year, 9-2. You have a couple really competitive ones. You lose against a Baker team that was, pretty highly touted. And that's an interesting story, too, in the fact that you talk about the parity in NAIA coaching and the trees and those kind of things. The prior Baker head coach goes to be, I believe it was a senior defensive analyst at, was it Mississippi State? And now he's going to UConn.
Yeah.
So like that, like, I guess technically on paper is a jump. Question mark? Like it's very odd, like having the ability to like own your own program and have like be the head guy versus going to work for a national power and NAIA.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. It's like it's the Wild West out here, man. I always say it, and like the coaching carousel, it's always funny because usually these programs will make like a good hire or a hire that makes sense for them. But then like, on the outside, it's like, who is this guy from,
Yes.
like middle of nowhere high school come to coach our program. I don't know. It's just
No,
it's fun.
I get that. I get that 100%. Another guy who's coming from the high school ranks is Scott Merchant over at Lawrence Tech. And they're basically clean slated the whole deal as far as their brand new staff that they've brought in. I had a chance to get to know actually the previous two head coaches and Coach Duvendeck and Coach Mitchell over there. Went on an official visit there and a couple others while I was coming out of high school and had good relationships with both of those guys. They've both moved on to different gigs. Coach Mitchell has a new head coaching position, I believe, at it might be Olivet Nazarene. I don't want to misquote that. There you go. And a lot of shuffling going on. Coach Merchant, a hell of a lot of success in Michigan high school football, especially when it comes to state championships and other kinds of deals. He has led a lot of really prominent teams over there at Chip Valley, and this seems like an interesting hire, albeit I think they obviously are very confident in it, and it should be a good hire for them. He's a guy that knows how to lead. That making that jump from the high school to the college level is always one that can be challenging for these guys. But it's not like he doesn't have any experience. So I don't know. Talk about this and your first impressions on this one.
Yeah, Lawrence Tech they're kind of in an interesting spot. They're a program in the past few years that can't really get their feet under them.
Yes,
they had a decent season in 2021, obviously with like 7 or 8 wins, which is really good for what they usually put up, but kind of going back to back 3 to 4 win seasons and all this other, and they play in a ridiculous conference too, not to mention like the competition for them is fierce. So obviously it's a harder place to succeed, even in terms of NAIA standards. But I think Merchant, with what he's got going on, the experience he has, at least running a program, albeit not a college one, but working with similarly aged kids, obviously with your younger recruits, it's similar enough. And bringing in, also the experience of being a national champion in the 90s and all this other stuff when he was at D3, so it's there's a lot of good things going into it. I'm curious to see how it goes, because obviously clean slate for Lawrence Tech. In this scenario, they get to bring in a bunch of different guys. I'm sure that they're going to bring in, Merchant's going to bring in his own staff too, to some extent, whether it's analysts or assistants or whatever. But yeah, it's this is what I'm gonna have my eyes on, because I think Lawrence Tech is in an interesting area where they get a lot of talent. Like, they're always kind of capable. I just haven't seen them take that next step recently. So it'll be interesting to see if a new coat of paint can get it done for them.
I like that. Yes. No, the vision is definitely there for Lawrence Tech and investing in a program. But for me, when I was going through that process, the main difference between a program like Lawrence Tech and a program like Indiana Wesleyan, per se, pretty comparable in terms of like where they're starting their program. Indiana Wesleyan had a lot of the pieces in place, right, to support a football team, to support a program and give them, yes, the facilities, but also just kind of the backing and all of the other structural and integral things that come with a football team. Those are ready to go and rolled out on day one. Lawrence Tech certainly has had the vision. It just is taken a lot more time to execute on some of the things that come off the field in terms of a football program. And I think that is not the sole reason, but definitely a reason that's contributed to their lack of success maybe in the last couple of years. You talk about those assistants that he's bringing in. One of them is my former head coach, Kyle Nystrom, the defensive coordinator down there. So that's a pretty cool piece. Glad to see him in that role, because I always thought, when it came to coaching ball, like, he knows what he's doing. Like, Coach Nystrom is a just classic old school ball coach. The dude, like, that's what he wants to worry about. And I think him in the DC position is going to be great for him. We know more than anyone that the head football coach job now has more politics potentially than ever before, and you're juggling so many different things, wearing so many hats. So I think for Coach Nystrom to be in a position where he can call defense and develop these guys down there, he's going to do a great job with that. They've also brought in other pieces to that staff. And I did want to pivot on a little bit of a tangent here and talk about one of those teams in that conference, Concordia Ann Arbor. Have you been hearing any whispers or anything of the sort about the state of their program?
I've heard some whispers. I actually have a guy I know that plays baseball there.
Okay.
So I've heard the whispers. I don't have many facts, so I'll let you peel off the band.
And that's where, things start to get a little gray, right? And we don't want to spit too much random conjecture. A little bit is always healthy. But they're facing financial problems is kind of the bottom line. And I've been told by people in the university that the bottom line in layman's terms is that either the football team shuts down or the school shuts down. And either way, football is not going to be a part of this university's future. Just about the entirety of the signing class going into that university this year, like the high schoolers, have all decommitted and are going elsewhere. And that's not a really good look because they've obviously been shared some information. And looking through, trying to find some sources here, it says in an email sent out to Concordia students on Tuesday, their president, Eric Ankerberg, said that the university is spending more money than it's taking in. Well, there you go. That's usually how you get in debt.
That's
particularly on the Ann Arbor campus. They do also have a campus in Wisconsin that is involved with them. And it says here, changes must be made to operate within existing revenues. It says organizations in Ann Arbor must be reimagined and by next fall must significantly reduce operations to prioritize the university's mission. That is a very, very complicated way of saying we're spending too much money. We're going to have to cut back on some shit. We're probably cutting programs. We're probably cutting full-time staff in certain areas. None of it's good. Like, you hate to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a Concordia Ann Arbor team too, who has been very, very good
on fire
in recent memory. They were a team I was super high on, if you remember this past season. They are always phenomenal. It's unfortunate because honestly, this trend is not uncommon in the NAIA. We've seen it a lot recently, you know, with Presentation College and North Star School. Oh, I mean, a lot of the North Star schools are shutting down, moving. We've obviously talked about realignment in that sense a little
Jamestown
bit in the
them,
podcast before. And Jamestown's leaving, and there's all this, there's so many weird things going on at this level, especially because the NAIA mostly operates as like private schools.
Yes.
A good chunk of these schools are private. And I think with the funding, like I'm not a, school financial expert, but I know it makes, yeah, that's why I'm talking football on this podcast. I'll leave the dollars to somebody else.
Yep.
But it's always weird. It's always weird, and with different majors and different sports, and how I just saw, because Presentation was so close to Dakota Wesleyan when I was going there, I kind of had a front row seat to watch the entire implosion of that school.
Okay.
And it's not pretty. It was also weird because Dakota Wesleyan took in like most of their nursing program, which was also like, okay, that's weird.
Wow.
But just a bizarre thing to watch happen. And it's unfortunate that it keeps happening at a level of college football that is definitely, I don't want to say more pure, but closer to what people expect than what we're seeing at the bigger levels.
Yeah,
right
no, I can agree with that 100%. We went through something very similar up here with Finlandia University, the only Division III school up here in the Upper Peninsula, just about, say, an hour and a half north of us up in Hancock in Michigan. And they scrapped the whole deal. School went down, which obviously meant the football team went down, and we picked up a bunch of their guys as practice squad players for our squad here, which actually ended up, you could say, benefited us because we were at a point where everyone on our squad was jumping ship, and we just needed to fill roster numbers and get back up to whatever it is to field an actual football team. But it certainly don't want to make it seem like it would be any less bad if the team that was getting cut was dog shit or like not as good, but it does suck when you talk about a team that has had a really great amount of success, has done some quality things, and now out of their power, right? The powers that be, none of it's been finalized. We're just assuming that that Ann Arbor squad is not going to be taking the field this fall, which sucks. But we'll pivot, get on a little bit more of a positive note. Let's talk about your squad, Dakota Wesleyan. Didn't only get a new head coach, new with parentheses around, air quotes around that one. They just revamped the whole athletic department. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, so this story actually starts with John Hart, who is now the athletic director at Sioux Falls. Obviously, he was at Dakota Wesleyan for years, and his dad was a former athletic director, very tied to this community. Obviously, with the Sioux Falls job, open it up, D2 school, not too far, about 40 minutes east from Dakota Wesleyan. He pounces on that job.
Yeah.
DWU promotes Ross Semple, who was the head football coach originally and has been for 12, 13 years now. Takes the interim position and then is offered the job. And, lo and behold, Ross Semple is your new athletic director at Dakota Wesleyan University. They also promoted the women's basketball coach, who will still be coaching to a step under that role, basically, in a new spot. And then Alex Kretschmar, who was the former wide receivers coach when I was a senior, offensive coordinator last season, is now the head football coach. I'm a big fan of Coach Kretsch, as we all affectionately call him.
Yep. I was going to let you do that name, by the way. I was not going to try and step in and take a jab at that one, so I'm glad you did. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Hey, I'm used to last names like that, so you already know I'm prepared for that. But yeah, Coach Kretsch is absolutely amazing. He's great with the players. I think he's in a position to succeed, and especially with Simple being the AD now, as a guy who has all of that head coaching experience, he knows what resources the football program is going to need to succeed. And not that John Hart didn't, but obviously, Simple was so in it for so many years. He has that direct tie to all of it. So, as a alum, as a former player, I'm pumped for this move, and I think even on the surface, this move just makes a lot of sense. And I'm really excited to see, like, this Dakota Wesleyan program has been defined by what Coach Simple's built up over the past decade plus.
Yeah.
And who knows? Like, he just turned 40, so obviously he's not super old. Who knows if he comes back to coaching? Who knows? But in whatever capacity, as of right now, he's helping Coach Kretsch along, kind of as his boss here. So
yeah,
everybody moves up the totem pole a little bit. Everybody's happy, and I just think this is a good move. This makes a lot of sense. I'm happy about it. I got nothing but positive things to say about all these guys involved. So
hell yeah. But you talk about built on what Coach Simple has done, and that's even before D-Dub, right? You talk about over at Sioux Falls and the I guess dynasty, you could say, of sorts, and the amount of success that they've had there. And to have someone who's that familiar with the game and also winning at a high level with the game involved in any kind of admin position is a really important deal. Again, I'll draw on personal experience. I work right now with our athletic director up here at Northern Michigan, Rick Comley. The freaking ice rink is named after the dude because he won a national championship here with the hockey team. Whether you're coaching hockey or badminton, I don't care. If you win a national championship with that squad, you understand what it takes to make that next step in any kind of athletic profession or any kind of team or program in that role. So, again, no brainer. We're just here to talk about it, give him a little pat on the back, and keep it moving, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. I'll do that to Dakota Wesleyan all day. So go with me, man.
Let's talk about another squad that filling a pretty big hole, and that being Kaiser, right? We've talked on this show, and by we, I mean me, have talked a lot about Coach Socha moving up to Lenore Rhine and having Bobby Roman from Florida Memorial. I don't know if you tuned in any of that conversation, but he certainly was happy that he maybe doesn't have to see that man in the conference anymore. I got a couple of good sound bites out of him. Their new man over there, though, is Miles Russ. What were your first thoughts on this hire?
I absolutely love this promotion. This is a guy who's been around the program, been a prominent part of starting this program in the first place.
Yes.
Back in 2017, which I think is huge. Second head coach in program history, and it's not like much is really going to be changing for this squad, at least in terms of what they're able to do, probably how they go about things. Been around the offense long enough, is probably going to be keeping it at a similar pace. And he was the running backs coach who, if you remember, this Kaiser team was one of the best running college football teams I've ever seen in recent memory. Like, they were that good. He's coached a lot of good guys. He clearly knows his X's and O's. And I think just being around this winning program, he was the recruiting coordinator. He knows how to set that up and get that rolling.
That's big.
It's big. And for a program that is coming off of a national title run, this is where you're setting yourself up to be a dynasty. This is the kind of hire that will define your program for years and years and years to come. And I think they nailed it, if I'm being completely honest with you.
Yeah, dude, I'm right along with you. You talk about a guy that's been there since day one and been a part of this program, bringing them up. You talk about 5 consecutive NAIA playoff appearances, obviously. The last one this previous year, ending in the result that we all hope for in a national championship. And he said it himself that Coach Socha has been preparing him from day one of the program. Now is basically just a chance for him to put that experience into practice, is what he says. And a lot of his rhetoric was still around, like, still wanting to learn and to lead this team, continue to defend the beach. Those were his words. And that's pretty cool. Defend the beach has got to be
defend the beach, dude.
Yeah,
like
you see, it's on the hashtag on the tweet that I pulled up here. I don't know why I haven't noticed that first, but defend the beach is pretty badass.
And look, man, how it can't be that hard to recruit to a place where you're literally on the beach. By the way,
right?
Point that out. Like,
I came with my official up here, and I kid you not, snowbanks on either side of the sidewalk that were up to like my abdomen. Thankfully, like, that doesn't bother me at all. But when you try and get anyone that's not from the Midwest to come play ball for the Cats, good luck.
Yeah, Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, imagine being from the Midwest going down on a visit to Kaiser and you're, sipping out of a coconut with your toes in the sand, and it's like April,
You talk about the success of that Kaiser team, school record, which again, these last couple of years, probably everything they've done has been a school record. So
Yeah.
not to take that lightly, but put it into context a little bit where we're at with this program. Over almost 3,200 rushing yards, though. Recorded the most rushing touchdowns, 47. That's still a ridiculous number. And he's coached 3 different running backs already to 6 all-conference honors, while the backfield has had 5 All-American honors back there. So dealt with a lot of talent, being able to cultivate that talent, get the most out of those guys like Meisinger and the other ones that we've seen in that kind of tandem back there. He's got some good experience. Robert Morris, the head running back coach there, so it's not like this was certainly his first gig. And I would love to get him on here and pick his brain about that Bill Walsh minority internship in the NFL. He went and worked with the Bills for a stint. And we've talked with a few coaches about that. We've talked with Coach Jackson from Valdosta State about that experience. And everyone that I've heard from just speaks volumes about how impactful that's been in their coaching career. I would love to get him on here and kind of pick his brain about that, because that seems to be a common denominator for a lot of these really successful younger coaches taking these big roles.
Absolutely. And you get guys that get even a sniff of NFL experience and you bring them back down to these levels. And, not that that's a bad thing by any means. People will go wherever they want to coach, but holy cow, like sniffing at the top, bringing that experience down to your level with you.
Yep.
I mean, come on. Like, you can't really beat that.
Yeah. And I should say, too, he's Robert Morris's all-time leading rusher. So the dude doesn't just preach it. Like, he's 100% about it. I would not doubt he still jumps in a drill to show the guys, like, what he's talking about. Pen and paper circles and X's and O's type deal. Let me get in and show you the damn thing. I've never been to a Kaiser practice. No tampering right here. But if I were to imagine, I'd say Coach Rush still got it. Come on the show, Coach. Let's get you on here, huh?
Yeah. On a bad day, just goes up to one of the guys running the drills wrong. Just says, "Get out of the way. Let me do this. This is how you do the drill," and screaming the whole time as he's running. Hey, you know what? If you can do it, might as well, right?
Absolutely. But no, it feels like you said, feels like an obvious hire. Feels like a home run for them. And, they've got a lot of expectations to meet once again next year, but a lot of that's already it's done, right? Like, there's you can't just fall off the map if you're a program like that. You still got to make it back into the playoffs and make a run, but they've accomplished the ultimate goal in a very timely fashion in the time span of their program. So in some ways, the expectations are very high because of your past success with the program. But I think in others, it's not like we need to go repeat or the season is a failure, right? You get into the playoffs and you make a competitive run, and under this head coach, this first-time head coach, and it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah. I think Miles Rice is a guy who's not going to let last season, linger at all. He's ready to get to work, and that's what it seems like. That's what it seemed like from his opening interview. I'm super excited for this Kaiser program moving forward. It's going to be really fun to watch.
# defend the beach.
Defend the beach, man.
All right, Matt. I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah.
Have a good one. Thanks for hopping on.
Too.
We will we'll stay away from the stadium talk, but we'll get you back on here to talk some more real football. How about that?
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
See you, buddy.